Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our board retreat on priorities and our superintendent goals. This is a long-awaited retreat, but necessary for us to work together to plan for our students and our families this year, but come up with some realistic goals as a board. So welcome, everybody. I'd also like to say a quick thank you to Commissioner Ricardo Adams for giving up this time. This was normally a scheduled CIGR meeting, and he gave this time up so that we could have this retreat before September. So thank you very much, Ricardo, for doing that for us. Today, we are going to be going through a few activities, and I'd like to personally welcome Sherry Johnson from the Monroe County School Boards Association. She is here to lead us through our board priority development. And then we're also going to be hearing today from Dr. Myers on just an update on her mission, vision, core beliefs, and her superintendent goals for our district. So without further ado, we're going to get this thing started. I would like to introduce first Dr. Myers Small to talk a little bit more about our update on strategic planning.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Malloy, and good evening to President White, Vice President Elliott, all of our commissioners, cabinet members, and then all those who are watching this evening. I am very excited to have the opportunity to talk first a little bit about the areas of focus as I've hit the ground running and been in the district for a little over 3 months. Then I want to speak to the strategic planning process that we just recently concluded, and a very diverse group of internal and external stakeholders came together, and it was extremely synergistic, excuse me. So I'm excited to present our collective work. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about how potentially that some goals of mine that is aligned with that work, we could move forward for 2020-21 school year. So let me just start with the areas of focus. So as I've been just studying Rochester City School District, talking with many individuals, both internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, predominantly on Zoom, but I have been able to get out just a little bit in COVID-19, reviewing our both qualitative and quantitative data. The following 8 areas of focus I just want to briefly touch upon with the Board of Education and others. So we certainly need to have a focus and an emphasis on academics. That's the core of what we do, and that's who we are as an organization, as a school district. And so under my leadership, the goal is to really move that academic needle in the positive direction. We know that there are areas of concern relative to low performance and proficiency on 3 through 8 testing, particularly on ELA and math. While our graduation rate has been continually increasing, we want to continue that trajectory of having more of our students graduate. Conversely, we want to have very few students dropping out from the Rochester City School District. And I know that in particular, Vice President Elliott has really said that, it's really important for us to fortify our academics so we're not losing students to charter schools or to private and parochial schools. So that all gets folded into fortifying the academics. Budget and finances, we spoke at length recently about making sure that we solidify our finances, that we are fiscally sound, that we employ fiscally sound practices. And so I'm working with each of you and with our independent monitor, with Caroline, the cabinet, and others to make sure that we continue to be fiscally responsible and monitor the finances. Branding is really important. A school district is chosen by a family when they are moving into they choose a community based on the school district. We know that. And so, whereas we have so many good things that are going on. People don't always know about them. And at times we know that when we talk about the Rochester City School District, or we say that how we're specifically connected, that sometimes that it's not always positive. So I just, having the opportunity to attend every single commencement ceremony and to hear anecdotally from not only our principals, but teachers and parents and students, just commentary about not only our scholars and some of their success stories of how they made it to that day to hear pomp and circumstance, but just the passion and the dedication of our staff and just our amazingly rich community. So we need to do a better job to make sure that we are articulating that and sharing good news and good stories with our own school community, but also getting that word out to the external community of Rochester, Monroe County, and beyond. Certainly COVID-19 planning has been the area of focus for me and my team. Every single superintendent is figuring out how to reopen most safely and to do it in ways that are meaningful in their school communities. So that's the overarching focus. Trauma-informed practices. I've spoken quite a bit about this. And we know that our district, at least in Monroe County, is unique in the following ways. We certainly know that some of our scholars have experienced trauma in their lives, whether it's family trauma, their community trauma, or just personal trauma that they've experienced. So they have that. But unfortunately, because of COVID-19, the last day that our students were physically in schools was March 13th, mid-March. And so they have the trauma, and we've all been experiencing the trauma of COVID-19, right? Of the isolation, the separation, not being able to congregate with our friends and our extended family. So that has been difficult. But then our students, and I think this is where we differ from, at least in a more concentrated way, from our Monroe County partners and school districts, is that they have the trauma of racism. They have the trauma, they saw how things played out relative to the murder of George Floyd. We just found out the other day that another situation happened with a Black man being shot, so that trauma weighs very heavily on our scholars' minds. So we have to really continue to be focused on trauma-informed practices and making sure that we are supporting our students and giving them the really literally and figuratively wrapping our arms individually and collectively around them. A continued focus on implicit bias, anti-racism, and inclusion. We have such a rich diversity of young people in our district. And so making sure that we're able to connect with them and to them meaningfully, understanding their experiences, not feeling sorry or having fewer or less expectations, but really making sure that we're embracing the rich diversity that makes up the Rochester City School District. Special education continued to place an emphasis on making sure that we have that continuum of services for our students, that we're providing all opportunities and really making sure that LRE, or the least restrictive environment, is fully maximized for our students with disabilities, and making sure that they feel included and welcomed and embraced in our school district. And then finally, our multilingual learners, our bilingual learners. We have some of our schools have bilingual classrooms, and making sure that we are connecting to that population, expanding not only information on the website, but materials that we send out that are created in the language that our students and their families predominantly speak. So there's lots of work and things that we need to have happen, and to have a huge area of focus that make up that area of focus. So that really started, these 8 areas were the genesis for our conversations relative to strategic planning, because how do we bundle that all up? And I know that previously we've had strategic planning in the district. And so I wanted to have an opportunity to have, if you go to the next slide, please, have an opportunity for us to have multi stakeholders come together. And, you know, they weren't necessarily the usual suspects. So we had parents, we had staff, we had paraprofessionals, we had all teachers, et cetera, come together and over multiple meetings. And we did this all in a virtual online environment. And it was so synergistic. It was very, very powerful. But we wanted to, based on those areas of focus that I identified, we wanted to come up with this living document. And I think that's the key thing. Strategic plans often get completed. Districts pay lots of money to have them done, or they have people come together, and then they just sit on the shelf after all that great work that has gone into it. So our goal was really to create this living document that really articulates our story. It articulates our focus and what we hope, and I won't even say hope, what we will achieve in the short and long-term future. And then that journey and that path that it takes to get there. So, you know, a strategic plan talks about, you know, why our district exists, or the mission. It also focuses on aspirational aspects. So your vision, what our school community collectively believes to be so. So that's our core beliefs and our focus over the next 3 years. So how are we going to improve certain either areas or subgroups of students in our school community? So that's our performance targets. And then how will we accomplish this? Like what will be our guiding post to get there? And that's our priorities. So let's dig into that first page. And again, this is still draft form. This will come before you officially on Thursday for approval. And so I know, and I've mentioned this, that the board worked incredibly hard previously to create a mission and a vision. So I want to honor that work and recognize that you all spent lots of dedicated time to create that. But as we were developing the strategic plan, we took a look back to see if we could make a friendly amendment. And certainly, I believe a couple of weeks ago, we sent what our original mission vision was, and this is kind of the new one that we're submitting for consideration. So I just want to be clear that the mission and vision still are in the iteration, and some of the pieces were shifted into the core beliefs, which you'll see. So the mission, so why we exist, is to foster students' individual talents and abilities in a nurturing environment of equity. And that was really key. Now, some of that language was previously in a vision. So I just want to point that out. And then our vision. So what's our aspiration? If everything goes right and well in our school community, what does that look like? We ensure that all students have equitable access to a high quality education, and we graduate, that's future, each student as a productive member of society. So that was powerful. So I just wanted to point that out. And then I just have to say the process that was used to get to the core beliefs was really powerful. So we started, there was 26 or 27 of us. We started by saying what we thought our core beliefs were. Then we congregated in groups of like 4 or 5, and then we coalesced that information, collated it, and then we came together. So it really started individual, then small group, then the entire group. But you can see that even though they're not prioritized, this first one really should be first because it's the core, no pun intended, of everything that we do. But students are our first priority, and they drive every single decision that we make. And the group resoundingly was like, yes, 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 that's it. And then you can see the rest, that each student has recognizable and untapped potential that we strive to discover and fulfill. Number 3, we embrace diversity and commit to the eradication of racism and all forms of discrimination and oppression. 4, we provide students, families, and staff with equitable access to resources for learning. Next, we respect and honor the dignity of all individuals. Further, educating the whole child requires high-quality learning that is safe, loving, and rigorous. Our work is centered in respect, trust, integrity, and accountability. Education is a partnership of families, the school, and the community. And finally, we make each fiscal and resource allocation decision equitably, transparently, in the best interest of our students. And so that's that first cover page that we're asking for you to consider. But again, just think about those 8 areas of focus and just see how that that through line is from that first page to the next. I won't read all the rest of the, I won't read all of the priorities, but how do we get there? How are we going to make sure that our areas of focus happen? And you can see we group them under engage, lift up, collaborate, and lead. And so you can see that again, that first one is the provision of high quality learning experiences, the ensuring that we have an inclusive, caring, and safe environment. And I will tell you right here, that priority you hear over and over and over again from the voices of our scholars. They very clearly articulate that. And I have to make sure that our commissioners, our president and vice president know that we did have 2 very active student participants on the strategic planning team. They had, they weren't shy at all. They had equal voice. And oftentimes they did the reporting out for their group. We wanted to make sure that student voice was really key in this process. But over and over again, we've heard the importance of that inclusive, caring, and safe environment, that we're going to build strong community, and that we're going to foster dynamic leadership, because we know that that's the key to a school district being successful, is certainly the having that high quality teacher, but having that leadership. So I'm just going to go over just one page of what the performance targets, trends and targets look like. And you can again see how this correlates back to those 8 priorities. So graduation, and we did a 4-year. So right now you can see where the different subgroups sit. So our Black, Latinx, all of our students with disabilities, and ELL, and what our goal is to get to. So conversely, you can see the dropout rate and where we currently sit, and where we are, our target, and where we're headed. So those are pretty clear. I just want to make sure when people see CCCR or CQR, that is college, career, and civic readiness. If you can make that just a little bit bigger, if that's possible, Kalia, please and thank you. Is that better for folks? I know it's small. Maybe just even blow the bottom ones up since we've seen it. If you can make that just a little bigger, great. Okay, so this is making sure that students participate in a rigorous, one or more rigorous courses or experiences. So it could be an advanced placement course. We were talking about that previously, or an international baccalaureate course. The seal of biliteracy, or taking the Skills USA test. So it's making sure, or a CTE experience, career and technical education. So our goal is to drive that number up to make sure more of our students are participating in those rigorous activities along college readiness, career readiness, and civic readiness. So that's something that we really need to focus on, and we felt was important. And you can see how it's delineated along the lines of race, ELL, and students with disabilities. So you can see the gap for students with disabilities is pretty wide in that particular area. And then this is another area as far as the percent of grade 9 cohort on track to graduate by year end. And this is our first measurement, is making sure that they earn a minimum of 5 credits by the end of their freshman year. So that first freshman year. And so you can see where we are currently and where we are aspiring to go and what our target is. So we have 16 of these performance targets that we are looking at. So we're looking at 3 through 8 testing, a proficiency rather, on ELA and math. We are looking at the number of schools that move from either being receivership, CSI, TSI, to schools in good standing. So again, we use a lot of acronyms: targeted support or comprehensive support or receivership. And we want to move those schools to schools in good standing. And that has to deal with everything from performance on Regents exams and 3 through 8 testing, attendance, etc. So we also have a target on schools who are using restorative practices, and we have a continuum. So we want to move schools from one level to the next to eventually being a fully restorative school. So we're looking really at the gamut of how do we make sure that each student that crosses the threshold every day into the Rochester City School District. Right now they're doing that online, or they'll start on the 14th remotely, but each student has all of these supports wrapped around them, and we put strategies in place to make sure that they do actualize those targets and that we can move it in a positive direction. So if you'll go to the next one. And so we wanted to include this for you to see that the targets that we have, and I forgot to mention absenteeism. So the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, and then the Individuals with Disability Act, they have certain requirements. So there are certain targets that are articulated through those measures. So our targets certainly exceed what the state has for the Rochester City School District. So I think it's just important to know that we just didn't aim for what we minimally needed to achieve, but that we were going above and beyond that. If you'd go to the next. So how does this translate into the goals and performance objectives for me as the superintendent here in Rochester? And this is just a sample to show, because I know previously there's been about 6 goals or so. So we could, if we wanted to look at student achievement, we could have a goal there. Accountability, we could have a goal there. Parent and community engagement, healthy youth development, safety and discipline. So we could look at goals and putting one underneath each. And let me just be clear, even though there may be, if we choose to go this route, even though there may be one, all of those areas that are identified, the performance targets, we're going to have action groups that will be working and led by an individual who is most closely related to that particular goal. So like, for example, with absenteeism, we'll have certainly the chiefs working on that. We'll have accountability working on that. We'll have innovation working on that. We'll have principals working on that. So we'll make sure that we have folks identified in those subgroups that can move that work forward. And this just isn't happening at the district. Once you approve our strategic plan, then School 2 has to figure out how that applies to them and how they will move that forward. And again, our chief of schools will be working with the principals at the elementary, the middle, and the secondary level to make sure that they are in turn having this again be a living document. So the goal, President White, is to, when we're with the Excellence and Student Achievement Committee, this obviously will guide a lot of the work as far as updating the board, the commissioners, around what is happening. And we want to make sure, again, that this is alive and is very robust. But the other thing that I just wanted to put out there, because we are currently remote, did we want to, I've also been thinking about how I make sure these goals also can be fluid in being remote, at least for now. And we don't know, if an executive order comes down or something changes. But we know, for example, 3 through 8 testing did not happen. Students were not tested during 2020. That could indeed happen again, both for 3 through 8 and or Regents exams. So we just want to be cognizant to have some goals there that just don't go by the wayside because they're not measured. So I just want us to think about that collectively as a superintendent and Board of Education group. So that's just an example of something that we can do. I'll work with Dr. Morris, Deputy Superintendent Morris. We can figure out, once we identify the goals, then we can figure out how we will measure them and how we'll determine if I've achieved them or not. Last slide for me on this presentation is just to outline some next steps. So we certainly need to have a discussion and alignment of what you all are thinking and what I would like to do. And I know Sherry's going to help us move through that. Certainly another next step is the approval of the strategic plan on the 27th on Tuesday. And let me just pause there. On the last day of strategic planning at the end, there was a debrief session and just an opportunity to talk through how did it go, what were the joys, and what were the were there any pain or pressure points. And I have to tell you that everyone said this was such an inclusive process, that they felt valued through the process, that they felt so included. And so we, the folks that are on that plan, have committed to meeting. We're going to take September off so we can get everything settled for remote. But October, November, December, and January, we're going to meet every month for 4 months to see how the plan is going, to see how is it working, and to get feedback and perspective from the different groups. But folks were just so committed, and they were like, we are so glad that we did this. So I want to thank the board for supporting us being able to move in this direction to create a revamped or a new strategic plan. We will develop those action planning committees that will address absenteeism, that will address 3 through 8 testing, that will look at graduation rate, that will look at restorative practices, et cetera. And then we'll work to finalize the superintendent goals. And I guess the last one that's not on there, but the most important one, is that we'll just move forward and we'll just make this happen. I feel very good about this process. I'm very pleased at the work that was done. And again, what individuals, participants said is that everyone had an equal vote, and it wasn't that the superintendent or a central office administrator outranked a parent or a teacher, that everyone had equal voice. So I feel very, very proud about the full document that will be coming forward to you all for your review, and they are anxiously awaiting for your final approval on it, and they feel good, very good about the body of work. So that is my presentation in a nutshell. I don't know if there are any questions.
I see some hands up. So yes, I think we do have some questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Superintendent, for that presentation. And I just want to extend a thank you to you and to your team for the hard work that you had to do really quickly
Sure.
to put this together. So
it was ambitious.
That we're dealing with.
Yeah.
I thank you for this. So thank you, and we'll support in any way we can. So the first hand that I saw was from Commissioner LeBron, followed by Commissioner Elliott.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey.
Just a couple of questions, Dr. Myers. One on the strategic plan.
Yep.
I did read it over the weekend because it came in the Friday newsletter.
Yes.
So that we can get familiar with it.
Yes.
It was just wondering in terms of the details. I know that this is a draft form, but I'm curious as to how this will actually be implemented. And so I guess for me, when I think of a strategic plan, I would like to see the goal and then the steps that will be taken throughout the district to actually reach the goal for the strategic plan. And then that brings me to the last 2 slides that you presented with the goals. So let me just say, when I first got on the board, and I have to give a little bit of this piece of it because we had a different superintendent and there were different goals that were set for that individual. And one of, I guess, my own personal pet peeves around any goals that are set
Yeah.
is how they are measured in a
Yeah.
quantitative way. And so when I read something like accelerate the academic performance of all students, for me personally, that doesn't quantify anything academically for a student. So I would much prefer that goal read accelerate the academic performance of all students by increasing their math and reading levels by 3 or 5%. And I say smaller numbers because I do recognize that it takes a lot of work to move that needle in those areas. And I know more people would probably want me to say something like 50%, but I want to be realistic about a goal as well. So I know that this is a draft. Are you looking for us to work with you on these, or for the board to approve these on Thursday? For the goals, for your goals, and for the strategic plan, I guess, as well.
So this is just a sample, and I'm sorry, this wasn't clear, Commissioner LeBron, so thank you for that question. That's each one, that's the general topic, but then I would fill in and say increase 3 through 8 ELA, or so this is just kind of the broad categories, because we need to have that conversation. So I'm not looking to have the final approval of goals yet, because we need to go back and forth. But I wanted to give the general categories to make sure you were good with that, and then I can fill in after that.
Okay.
Yes, no, I wouldn't be that vague.
In the past, the previous superintendent had goals kind of very much so.
No.
And then, I had an issue with how the goals were written for previous superintendents, how they were not in a measurable way, but then we were expected to measure them and in super eval give the superintendent an evaluation based on these goals, that anybody can write these and say, yeah, I accomplished this because I said so, and there's no actual measurement to show evidence of it. Okay. And so I guess the same with the strategic plan. I know that it's a draft and a living document.
Yes.
Will there be more actual details as to how we're going to implement the strategic plan throughout the district?
Right. So once this frame is approved, then that's when the magic of Dr. Morris takes over, and she's going to create much more detail and put the bones and everything in this is the bones. She'll put this, well, I won't get graphic, but she'll make it much more robust and really will fill it out. Yes. And that's her wheelhouse. So.
Okay. Got it. And then you'll represent the details of the
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron, and thank you, Dr. Myers-Small.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we have Commissioner Elliott.
Thank you, Dr. Myers-Small, for this presentation. I just have a couple of questions. One is, it seems to me that with regard to absenteeism, that the whole online learning may be an opportunity for some of our students. Some of our students are not able to come into the classroom because of, having to take care of small children, having to take care, their siblings, or some kind of involvement that they have to do around their house. And so this may be an opportunity, as I said, for us to look at how do we engage those students who can't be into the classroom. So I'm looking forward that if there may be some ideas around how do we capture those students who would normally be out of school because of some real life issues that they may be experiencing. How can we use this online learning to capture that? So I'd be interested in the future to having some kind of your thoughts around how we do that to help to reduce the absentee rate.
Could I just give a response to that?
Sure.
Because that's really fascinating. When I was working for the state education department, I went to visit a high school, and the principal had done an analysis of some of her students that really had very poor attendance, but she noticed that they were doing incredibly well in their courses, and she said, well, wait a minute, let me see what's going on. And these indeed were students who were taking care of younger siblings or their own children or childhood children, or had jobs, but they were working at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so I want to circle back and see what were some of the things that we were doing. Because those kids, I know that it's perseverance and stick-to-itiveness, but there was something there that was compelling those students. And so we need to capitalize on that. But that she had this principal had students that were just knocking it out of the park and doing so well with their online learning. And one of the things that I was trying to work on, and I want to circle back with our interim commissioner and the folks at the state ed department, is if we have students who are engaging for, and taking those classes, why can't that count as attendance when we have regular brick and mortar attendance? There's no reason why that shouldn't be able to count. And I had pitched that to then Chancellor Rosa and some of the regents, and there was traction with that. They were interested, because I think it's appropriate for us to get credit for those students. They're just not going from 7 to 3, but they are engaging from 6 or 7 o'clock on for multiple hours. So I am very interested in pursuing that and figuring out how we make that work. But yeah, some of our students do really well with the online credit recovery, and it's the mode that they are very comfortable with and very successful with.
Yeah. Also, this just comes up to independent learning. I don't know if we do a lot. I don't think we do a lot of that in our district, but where courses are designed by our students in cooperation with some faculty, and how do you? That just seems to me another opportunity for us to be forward thinking, if you will, about the way in which we graduate our students and teach our students. So
Sure.
That's one point. And secondly, about suspensions, how does the plan address suspension rates, Dr.?
Oh, there's a performance target there for that. But I think it will be interesting. We won't, at least for the first 10 weeks, we shouldn't have any.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. That's right.
But there is a measure for suspension.
Okay. What's the goal? What is that? Can you tell me?
Give me just 1 second. I can pull it up. The goal is, hold on. Currently, we have, the goal is students with disabilities are at 9.5%. So Black students, 8.7, all 6.9, Latino, 5.3. So our goal is to go down to, our target is 4%.
Okay, and then just the last question. We did a lot of work at Harvard around the public education leadership program.
Mm-hmm.
Is any of that language, and I know that Carmine was a part of that, is any of that language a part of the strategic plan that the group developed?
I can double check with Carmine, because Carmine was one of the participants. So I'll have to, Callie, if you don't mind, or Marisol, if you'll get it down, I'll double check to see. But he was there and was an active participant.
Yeah, we did a lot of great work there. So,
Okay.
I don't want us always reinventing the wheel.
Sure, I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Elliott, for your question, and thank you for your answers. Dr. Myers, are there any other questions for Dr. Myers at this time regarding the strategic planning document? Okay, it looks like this is going to be a living document that we're going to be filling a lot of information in over the coming months. I know we're going to be dealing with most likely different data sets, right? As we gather data on our students from the remote setting, from when we finally come out back to school in person. So I know I'm interested to see how we reconcile those different sets of data. All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Myers. And I think that moves us on to our next part of our retreat today, which is just the development of the board priorities. And we're going to start by doing a brainstorm. And to help lead us through it is Sherry Johnson from the Monroe County School Boards Association. We had the pleasure of having her last year, although Commissioner Adams and I were not yet on the board officially, but we were able to sit in on some of those meetings, and we certainly enjoyed your presentation. So thank you for joining us again and for helping to guide us through this process.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thanks for having me tonight to facilitate this portion for your board retreat. Even though we can't meet in person, it's all wonderful to see all of you. And I apologize to President White. I don't have chocolate candy that I have made personally to give to all of you this evening because we didn't meet in person. But down the road, I'm hoping we can. And this also keeps my record of working with you intact. So I've been able to meet with you at least once a year ever since I became executive director. And it was about this time last year that we did meet for the retreat, as Commissioner Malloy has said. And so I really want to thank all of you for taking the time to do this tonight. And I guess I need to thank Commissioner Adams for giving up time so that you put in this particular block of time to do these priorities. Yes.
Sherry,
yeah.
I'm very disappointed.
I'm sorry. I have to tell you, I thought about trying to figure out how to get candy to you. I really did. But I know you double next time.
We need Wonka vision.
Wonka vision. You have to explain that.
The Willy Wonka.
Oh,
and the
from Willy Wonka. Okay. So anyway, so have a candy bar on me sometime. But I know all of you have heard me say multiple times that I believe passionately in your self-care as both a member of a 7-member team and an 8-member team, including your superintendent, and that leadership matters, right? And I've always said that. So, I give you a lot of credit for taking the work that you have done over this time. So I have been on probably over 100 Zoom or webinar meetings or go-to meetings since March. It feels like there's been 1,000, but most of those I've been a participant and not a facilitator. So you're going to bear with me tonight as I work through this, but Kalia has agreed to help me out in a big way. And so I did this by PowerPoint, but I'm leaving it as a file, and I may have to, because I want to be able to make this interactive so that you can actually physically work on it. So there may be a time when I'm going to have to switch over and share so that we can type actually on here. But just as an overview, I want to give you a sense of what is been our time, our 5 years together, knowing, as Commissioner Malloy has said, that when I started with you, you had different members on your team. You had different superintendent. But through those 5 years that I've worked with you, some of you have remained during that entire time, and some of you have come on during different iterations of those meetings. And so I thought I would give you a short trip down, give you a sense of what you have done to improve your team's self-governance and alignment with district goals and priorities, because I felt that it was important. Then we'll go through this quickly. I just want to have a quick input from all of you about your standards of conduct that I know that you have approved, your code of ethics and your board bylaws, significant documents that you have worked on over this time. And while I was able to work with pieces of you on that, you carried the ball on that afterwards, and then get into the board priorities, brainstorm, and try to also stay on time with you. So if we can start with the former priorities and goals that you have worked on, and I'm not going to read this, you have it, but I wanted you to have the list because, again, there are people on this Zoom and in this meeting at this retreat that haven't really seen this collectively. And there are board members that haven't seen it as well. So when I first worked with you way back 5 years ago, you were looking at your committee structure and what were your meetings of the whole. And as Dr. Miles Small said, you've got a superintendent evaluation tool. You've also got your own. You looked at board liaison roles. But you also worked on, not as a goal, but as a priority, to continue working together as a cohesive team. And then you can see as we work down here some of the other things that you have worked on. And now it's not a comprehensive list, and I don't mean it to be, but that is where, if I pulled up all of the board retreat information that I've had based on working with you over these 5 years, this is kind of a comprehensive list of what I have around what you've worked on. So if we go to the next slide, recently you've done your equity and educational excellence policy in March of 2018. You can see I've been on your website, I've looked at your policies, your board bylaws in August of 2019, your school safety, health and safety programs, your code of ethics, and your standards of conduct. And at this point, I would ask, do you want to comment on any of those specifically, or do you just want to move forward? I think I understand that your standards of conduct may be up for a review. Am I right?
You're right, Sherry. They'll be voted on in Thursday's business meeting. They're going to be voting on also changes to the bylaws as well.
Okay.
Hey, Sherry,
Yep.
I wanted to say that your work with us on, I think it was the standards of conduct. You remember we were doing that exercise, and
Yes.
it took us a while to get to some consensus, but we were able to. And we actively use those standards. And in fact, as a follow-up to that, we conduct pretty regularly a board survey at the end of our meetings, and a number of the questions that we ask relate to the standards of conduct. So I want to thank you. I'm sure my colleagues join me in that thanks for you getting us through that initial phase of that project, because that was very challenging, but we got through it with some consensus, and we now use those to sort of keep an eye on ourselves collectively in terms of how we relate to each other. So thank you for that work.
Well, thank you. And really, this is all your work. I am happy to facilitate however I can to get you to that place. And I really congratulate all of you. If you look at those standards of conduct and you compare them to other standards of conduct across our districts that our Board of Education use, yours is very comprehensive. So you really took the time and the effort to do it right and do it well. So congratulations back to all of you. And I think that's what I want to say. These are really comprehensive pieces of work. And so they're really important documents, and I want to make sure that you don't lose the momentum around that. So that's just my little cheerleader type of thing to continue in that direction, because it's a very positive direction to be going in. So I have worked with a number of Board of Educations this spring and this summer in the middle of our COVID-19 environment. And this is probably my 5th or 6th one that I've done. And I just wanted to give you a sense of what other districts have been, other boards of education, other board priorities that they have actually been working on. And they're not in any particular order. You will see that there's a whole bunch of ones that Dr. Myra Small has actually mentioned around district goals. I do want to tell you that communication across the board in this particular environment, communication from board to each other, to the central office team and the superintendent, to the community, has been a priority for almost every single one of our working with because of the current environment. It's always a top priority, but this year it's just been really highlighted. And on policy and code of conduct changes, some Board of Education members have decided to do some actual policy work around the new requirements under the plans and assurances that the State Education Department and that the Department of Health is requiring of you, as well as code of conduct changes, but not everyone has. Many believe that their code of conducts are just fine and they cover all of that. So those are a couple pieces. I got to sit on Regent Wade Norwood, put me on a digital divide right in the middle of all of this when we were trying to figure out what was this going to mean, this entire remote learning in an emergency situation. And many of our district boards have picked up on that as well, as they also found out no matter where they sit, there are students and families in their communities that don't have access and equity. And then of course, racial equity and diversity, that is going to be a big goal for many boards. It certainly is stuff that MCSBA is going to be aligning themselves with, social and emotional learning. I didn't put trauma informed, but that's on there. And then school culture, finances, and transportation. So those are just some of the ones that they worked on. And I'm only giving that to you so that you have things going on in your head. I know you probably have some of your own, but just sort of as a reminder. And then you'll see where it says purposely left blank. So this is now your turn. And what Kalia is going to do is I'm going to write them on my sheet so that I have them for you, but she's going to write them down, and we're going to try to capture in real time this time. For me, this will be a challenge, so I want to thank Kalia so much for helping me out here. To make sure that we capture all this and get this back out to you. And what I want you to try to come up with are some key priorities that you have on your mind to consider as board priorities. This is a brainstorm. We're not worried about the words right now. We're not worried about the titles. It could be a one word or a sentence that you think as a board you need to prioritize. You just saw Dr. Meyer's small presentation on what the strategic plan is going to be dealing with, what the as her potential priorities and goals are going to look like. So where do you sit with all of this? And I'm going to be quiet.
So Sherry, would you like us to just kind of shout things out? Would you prefer that we raise hands, or can people just talk simultaneously? Oops, you're muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
It's hard to see all of you on the screen. Oh, there we go. So I think that if, if you want to lead that and then sort of help your fellow commissioners develop that. And like I said, I'm going to sit quietly and write, and then I will take you through the next steps.
Okay. I don't see any hands off to the side, but I'll quickly just say, I know, just to throw an idea out there, I know one of my primary focus points is just academic improvement. District-wide. Oops. Oh, and I see Commissioner Adams.
So one of my primary focuses right now is on finances. I think as a board, we need to figure out a way to advocate for some more finances. I don't believe we legitimately can function on this 20% cut that we're facing. So I just think, I don't have an answer, but I know we need to get some more money, and that's what I know. So finances is a big priority for me right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Is there anyone else who wants to throw something out there on the brainstorm? I don't see any other hands. I think we can probably just speak up.
Commissioner Malloy, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Ricardo said. And I don't know that anybody has the capacity to do it, but in addition to becoming good fiduciary agents, as part of being good fiduciary agents, we have to figure out where we're going to raise revenue, because I said this afternoon in a meeting, I just can't see how we're going to just cut and not cut our children at the knees in terms of their ability to be successful. And I don't know, I don't have the answer for it, but I just know that just having an agenda of cutting is not going to work for our kids. So, but it's just a goal.
Thank you, President White. If I could just add another one, I know just kind of along those lines, because certainly the finances will probably be our #1 issue and goal for the year. But I think part of that includes really looking carefully as a district about where we want to go, maybe looking at the managed choice policy, or looking to restructure in a way where we can find some cost savings, but also restructure in a manner that works best for students academically.
And I want to support that, Commissioner Malloy. Certainly there has been a number of years, Sherry, spent having discussions around the managed choice policy, and previously Commissioner, Hallmark had led a group in this community to have conversations around this. The findings were presented to the board. The board spent a number of months having conversations with consultants, and then the board voted to keep the same managed choice policy with fidelity, which meant nothing. So we literally spent all this time doing nothing other than having conversations. So I would love for us to move forward and really look at restructuring the managed choice policy in a way that is more financially, fiscally responsible, I should say, to the district, but also responsible to our families and in the neighborhoods that they live in. For me, I'm also going to say finances, but also finances and how we manage finances as a district, and our expenditures and our policies and procedures around it. And I just don't think we are doing a great job around that. And until we fix our procedures and our policies and how things occur internally for finances in the district, I don't believe that no matter how many cuts we make, we're going to continue to hemorrhage until we fix those systems internally.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Thank you. I see Commissioner Powell's hand.
So with the invocation of the managed choice policy, my stream of consciousness takes me to conversation about equity. Some would say that, there's nothing like a crisis to accomplish what you want. Sometimes what you want is kind of an exploitation, however, of the people in the greatest need. And so we cannot forget that some of our poorest performing schools have been in the neighborhoods that need high performing schools the most. So whenever we have a conversation about managed choice, we have to be very clear that we're not abandoning our commitment to equity.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Let's see, I see President White.
Just to piggyback on what Commissioner Powell said, the history of this whole movement away from managed choice to neighborhood schools is complicated by the fact that many of our troubled neighborhoods, economically challenged neighborhoods, have schools that are challenged as well. So to get rid of managed choice relegates many people to neighborhoods that don't have their fair share of effective schools. That's not fair, that's not right. So I do want to revisit that conversation about having neighborhood schools, because I think if all other things are equal, neighborhood schools are good. But if a particular neighborhood has a disproportionate share of ineffective schools, it would not be fair. So I want to make sure that when we have this conversation about looking at managed choice, that we understand that it not be done until we have our neighborhoods all have their fair share of effective schools. The other thing, I don't know how specific this is, but of course, and it could be included in any one of these, like academic improvement, but I don't want to say increasing graduation rates, ELA scores, math scores, how we move and effectively resource our special needs students, our bilingual students. Those are areas which we have suffered, and those goals I would think have to be specifically laid out for improvement. So I think Commissioner LeBron said earlier on, we got to make sure that by the superintendent, by which she is judged, the performance indicators are very specific with respect to where she's supposed to be by X date. It won't be enough to just say, oh, you know what, let's improve our performances, our performance indicators in the area of ELA scores and math scores. It's got to be 5%. Terry, by the way, had those kind of projections. And so did Bohan. Barbara, I don't think did.
Barbara did not, but Terry had them and then just left in the middle of the
Right.
All right, I don't see any other hands. Would anyone like to add other items to our brainstorm?
So,
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Adams.
so I definitely would like us to try to use parents as consultants. This is what I came on here for, to advocate for parents input. They're the professionals. A lot of them know a lot more than we give them credit for. And and I've been learning a lot. I've been learning a lot sitting on this board, but I've been learning a lot from the parents, listening to their input. And I just think that we need to develop an avenue where we use them as the consultants, man. It definitely would be cheaper. You're not going to pay them like we pay these people from out of town. So I just would like to see us being able to utilize our community a little more. That's what I would like to see us do.
Thank you,
I ain't gonna keep
Commissioner Adams.
going on and
Yeah,
on
to
about
feedback on that, I would say just improved community engagement, rethinking our community engagement. And as Commissioner Adams said, yeah, start with the parents.
This may be a bit pie in the sky, but
It's a brainstorm.
it's a brainstorming. Increasing the percentage, decreasing the number of students who disenroll in this district. If we can't measure our success by the number of, we should be measuring our success in part by the number of families that decide this is a district they want to stay in. So we ought to be saying to Leslie, listen, one of your performance indicators is going to be how many students are enrolled in the district, and we should see that number go up. You know, we can be very modest because she doesn't control it all, but I think, you know, one of the measures of success is, or one of the measures of our failure has been people are leaving this district. They use that when they talk about this district all the time. So we ought to reverse that on them and start talking about, oh, you know what, we had a 2% increase. It's possible. I mean, I know people say it's pie in the sky, but I think it's possible. We get enough good schools going, we could do it.
Thank you.
So could you write looping down for me? Oh, okay. I said, could you write looping down?
Oh. Yeah, so that might fall under academic.
Am I frozen?
Perhaps? Yeah, I think you're freezing.
Yeah. All right.
I can hear you, but.
I'd like to have my name added to that too. I think from the standpoint of building relationship with families to teachers, that there's a lot of value to be had in exploring looping concept.
Oops, thank you, Commissioner Powell.
Okay.
Actually, one last thing, if I could add, just under academic improvement as well, you know, we need to make sure that whatever policies we come up with as a district, that we are helping to decrease our absenteeism. I view that as one of the major faults in our district, and any policy on this list it corresponds and correlates to the inability of our kids to improve academically. You know, they can't improve if they're not there.
Commissioner Malloy, I see Commissioner Shepard raising her hand.
Oh, I didn't see that. Commissioner Shepard, sorry about that.
Yeah, so when I was on a conference, I met a superintendent in a district in Texas, and he told me that they introduced a policy in their district where every single student had to engage in curricular activity, whether that was participating in a sport, doing an art, doing music instruments. And so I think that would be a good way to add to the brainstorm about student engagement. And I think that it would also assist with some of the other areas that are on here as well. If students are engaged in things that they like to do, we might be able to, you know, work on absenteeism and all those other things with academics.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepard. President White, is that an old hand?
No, that's a new hand, but real quickly, under equity, access to or increasing the number of students who take AP courses. Thanks.
So can I just add one, since this is just like a wish list? I would love to see the district have a more strategic and aligned community partnerships where we're not paying. And I say we're not paying because a lot of our non-for-profits are getting funding from their own funding sources to service the same families that live in the city that go to the district. And oftentimes we're paying them to provide a service that they're already getting paid to do on their own in the community. And there has to be a way to strategically align ourselves so that we can provide all the services that they need, because the school district alone can't do it. Sorry, you guys, my work cell is ringing. Should be off at this point. So with that said, just aligning how we provide these resources and services. So if there's a way to provide case management services for families outside of the district in a way that is a collaborative effort with the district and the organizations that provide those services. I know that systems integration, that is their arching overall goal, and I serve on those committees on that platform as well. But I think there's things that we could do now, certainly to better align ourselves, even with the county, with the Department of Human Services and the number of families that do access the resources available through them.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. All right, Sherry.
Also,
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Amy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you? Oh, you raised your hand. I'm sorry about that. Commissioner Powell.
And I did hear Ricardo's voice, so I think he wanted to add something too. But so I want to honor what you had said about an academic goal of reducing absenteeism, but I'm also cognizant of what the superintendent just said about students that do extremely well in an online learning environment. So I think to support what you said and what the superintendent said together, I think we need to push for a new definition of attendance absenteeism, and I think that we should be working in league with consortium schools, like, you know, the school without walls type schools, to also try to redefine academic success through portfolio measurements rather than tests, you know, simply standardized tests.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Adams.
yeah, so I think there needs to be more comprehensive thing when you talk about absenteeism. For instance, 2 years ago, I took my kids on a 2-week educational tour during school to the Lynch Museum, New Orleans, Atlanta, and everything. But that trip hurt my school, and it helped really took my school over the edge into receivership. There was another parent at my school, child broke his leg, got hit by a car. And was out 2 or 3 weeks. It don't matter the way it's designed now. The school is still penalized. So we need a better comprehensive plan about what's really absenteeism. Because the way they're doing it right now, just lumping everything together, there's no exceptions. We got to fight back against that.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Yeah, I'm sure your daughters learned more in that 2-week trip than they did in any history classroom, right? So we have to start looking at things in innovative ways. So I concur completely. All right, do we have any other hands? I can't see any on here.
Not seeing it either.
Great.
So this is an amazingly comprehensive list that we need now to put in priority buckets. What we want to remember is, if we think about the SMART goal acronym, is we want them specific, we want them measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. The recommendation is 3 to 5 goals. And obviously you want these aligned to the district goals as they are developed. But they're your goals, so you get to choose. So if I look at, if we could go to the next slide, priority buckets, and then again, I need all of your input on this, because if you don't like what I'm saying, we need to put down what you really want under this. And remember that these are board priorities, right? How is it that the board is going to develop these goals, measure them, monitor them, and then determine whether or not you have been able to reach them in the ways that Board of Education members work with the support of the district. So I heard finances and as one of your priorities, and in many different ways. How do we advocate for more dollars? How do we get revenue? What are the things that we can do as a board to figure out where we can reallocate our current dollars in order to more effectively help families and help students in the current challenges that we have. Under academic improvement, you had a lot of things. Again, you're really concerned about absenteeism, which directly affects academic achievement, about graduation rates, and how are you going to manage. I'm looking at my notes here to make sure that I didn't miss anything on their academics. You're talking about some different things that you might be able to do with regards to looping. And how are you going to decrease the number of students that leave your district? You know, how do you want to become that district of choice, right? You want to be the district that takes in, has students come because all of your schools are the kinds of schools that parents want to raise their families in those particular neighborhoods. Community engagement was another big one for all of you, right? You want to be able to reach more directly out to families, to parents, to get their input. You all have liaison roles to schools. At one point when we worked together, you looked at those liaison roles. Is that something that you might do? Do you need to have more community forums or ways that you can engage the community more directly? So, and again, we will develop words and things around these. I'm just trying to make sure I'm capturing titles, or if you want to change those titles in a different way. Equity was another big, because you were looking at the possibility of looking at your managed choice policy and seeing if that can develop into a more fiscally responsible, but also keeping in mind that you want kids to be able to go to a neighborhood school if you were to switch this, in where families have good schools to work from. I didn't bring it up, but I will bring it up now. One of, I believe, some of the issues when we had that discussion was around transportation, correct?
Yes.
And so I just want to make sure that that is part of that conversation. If you work on that again as a goal, as to who in those areas has reliable transportation and what families would be comfortable with their child were to walk to school. The other piece of that is, I don't know where you are. Would be interesting to have more of a comprehensive conversation around community schools. You know, where are you with those? One of the conversations I'm going to be having when you talk about decreasing the number of students who leave, I will be having a conversation this week with Regent Norwood around data on charter schools. And as Commissioner LeBron said, systems integration looks at how well community schools are able to become that front door and wrap their arms around an entire family for a multiple number of services, you know, but it requires resources, right? And resources is a huge issue for all of you. As you look at finances, I think finances might be finances/resources in terms of doing that. Absenteeism, again, related to academic improvement. I don't know if you want to keep that separate or if you want to keep enrollment separate with regards to as a separate goal, or if you want to add something else in there to do that. That's sort of what I wrote down, because again, as policymakers, what you want to be looking at, would we have, or that we could put in place, like the work that you've done the past few years to create the avenues, right? You're the policymakers, and then your superintendent, Dr. Myers-Small, will be putting those into place as they align with the strategic plan and the district goals as you move forward. So I'm going to be quiet a second. And did I miss something? I know we talked about independent learning. You know, one of the things that you will be monitoring under academic improvement is how are those that are in a remote learning environment attending? Do they have equity and access? Are they engaging? Are they attending? Are they able to succeed? And if not, how are you dealing with that? How is this social and emotional check-ins going? Are you making sure that kids have those kinds of supports as well? And then when you get back to in-classroom hybrid models, how does that? So you guys are going to be monitoring twofold things versus having all kids in school.
Thank you, Sherry. I don't see any hands.
So if we can go back to the priority buckets,
Right.
I just want to see if, now again, you don't need to have 3 to 5. You have given much in the pieces of these buckets. So you've added a lot to finance. Your role as a Board of Education member is for advocacy. There's a lot of advocacy that we will be doing on your behalf. And President White. Oh my goodness. Sorry, Van. President White just received a letter that I sent to Bob Duffy with regards to the need to make sure that our state is also using every resource to their availability and to push for that, along with our advocacy at the federal level, right? This is twofold. We need everybody engaged in helping our education go in the positive direction. In what has happened during this emergency is you've had to use funds differently, and that has created even more of a financial stress on all of our school districts. And so if we believe public education is critical, which I believe passionately, to our economy, to our defense, and to our democracy, our very democracy, we need to make sure that we're advocating constantly around this. And so I see hands raised, and I will shush.
So the first hand I saw was Commissioner Powell, followed by Commissioner Elliott.
Yeah.
Vice President Elliott.
Vice President Elliott, I'm so sorry, excuse me.
I can support the enrollment being a standalone priority bucket if we add enrollment / student engagement, which would take in the conversation about attendance, yeah.
I like that idea. Commissioner Powell, I wonder, would student engagement maybe fall under academic improvement?
Well, I don't know. That's why I would have thought enrollment would be part and parcel of an academic improvement bucket. But there are aspects of enrollment that, kind of like community engagement. The better we reach each individual student and the more buy-in we get from the students, the higher enrollment will be and the better academic performance will be. So it's either put enrollment together with academic improvement, or expand the definition of enrollment to include student engagement is my thinking.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, Sherry, I'm looking at the priorities and the priority buckets as well as the suggestions. I'm wondering, given the fact that the superintendent will be primarily in charge of a lot of these, are there any priorities that the board is missing in terms of looking at goals for themselves that they can of course achieve for themselves? Because of course they will be checking in with the superintendent to make sure that things like enrollment and student engagement and academic improvement and community engagement happen. On the board can do in its own functioning that would be good goals to achieve. Like, I like the advocacy priority because that does put things in the hands of the board and can be tracked that way. So I'm just trying to figure out if there's space for that in this kind of discussion.
One of the things that I would suggest is sort of, for instance, if you're looking at finances, have you looked at your financial policies yet? Have you done a policy review of your financial section? Are there things that you can do in there? And I believe also, if you're looking at the managed choice the managed choice policy, that would certainly be the work of the board with the superintendent to move forward. So those are just some of the suggestions under those. Again, I absolutely agree with you, Kalia. This is what is the board's support? What can they do as a board to support the larger district goals along with the work of the superintendent in the district to move everyone forward in the same place, right? So you're right, the titles look very much the same, but I think the work we need to define a little differently. So Vice President Elliott, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. And I think that's probably why I didn't participate in the brainstorming session, only because I was trying to think of it from the lens of policy. And I couldn't get there. And so all of what we're trying to prioritize, because we're not the managers, we're not the administration, how do we advocate for these on a policy level, on a intergovernmental relationship level? You know, are these the things that we can advocate for? So I wasn't able to participate in that conversation because I was trying to think, how do we really how do we do our role and not the district's role in those things that were being brainstormed? And of course, that was only a brainstorming session, so those things were coming out. Question becomes now, you know, what do we need to do from that policy level, the governance level that we have been elected to do, and not to do the work of the district?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Great point, and you said it extraordinarily eloquently. That is exactly your roles and responsibilities, and working together as a team is incredibly important, all moving in the same direction. And
so the work has to be around, if these are the priority buckets, we really have to think of from the lens of what do we need to do on a policy level? You know, what kind of advocacy around finances, or, you know, what kind of policies that we need to put in place in the district to make sure that, you know, there are checks and balances and academic improvement. What do we really mean by that from a policy perspective? So community engage, and we do have some of those policies in place now, but if we're talking about these are the priorities that we are interested in, I think we have to go back to those areas of policy and look at if there needs to be some improvements, if you will, for these. So.
Absolutely. Commissioner LeBron, I think her hand's up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just to kind of piggyback off some of the stuff Vice President Elliott's mentioning around policy. For me, when I think about finances and the policies we currently have in place, those policies no longer serve this district in the same way than when they were potentially first created or have just been passed on. Therefore, when I look at finances and I think policy, I look at the stuff we talked about like a week ago, that we need to have policies created so that we don't allow large sums of money to be moved between one budget item line to another without the board's approval and also understanding as to why that is occurring or why that needs to occur and what happened there. Because when I look at a written budget, I do expect that there's some amendments along the way because something unexpectedly may have come up. But in reality, we should not be moving large sums of line item money from one budget item to another and have that be the normal year to year. There's just no way that that's a normal way to have a budget in any organization, let alone a school district. So if we budget, you know, 15 million for substitute teachers, there's no reason that we move money out of the substitute teachers line to put it into another bucket that we should have adequately budgeted for. So I think of policies in that regard. When I think of policies with finances, I think of consultants because it is one of my biggest gripes in this district is the level and the amount of consultants that we hire without actual any performance indicators or no understanding of how they're going to either help our students, help the district, or what the outcomes of improvement. Historically, all of these people, and I can't tell you that some of these contracts, when I first came on the board and I saw some of these consulting contracts, I'm like, anybody could do this contract. Anybody can pick up this contract and say, yep, I met the language in the contract, because it was so loosely written. So when I think about policies and changes in regards to finance and academics, those are just some examples right there.
And along with that, obviously, you are going to have, as you move through this, and you have people at the district level that can help you walk through these and to provide some expertise around moving those forward in the most appropriate way, who are looking at your budget and analyzing it strategically on how to move forward. And those will, I'm sure, come as recommendations from your superintendent. I want to just make sure, and again, these are great points, that there's nothing on the list that you as a board, as a member, 7-member board, you know, obviously this is work you're going to be doing with your superintendent, that you would want to work on amongst yourself. So I know last year you did your standards of conduct and you worked through those. You looked at your code of conduct. Is there anything along those lines that you would want to, as a team, to add to this list? And I'm not trying to give you more, because obviously you have more than you need right this minute. But we can probably combine some of those and narrow those down a little bit. I just wanted to put that out there just to make sure that in terms of your own self-care, is there anything that you would add?
So would board professional development perhaps fall?
Yes.
Under that?
Yes.
So yeah, if we could add that to that other list.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we could put that in the list ahead.
Can you repeat that point for me, Commissioner Malloy? I'm sorry.
The board's own professional development.
Sherry?
Yes, sir.
I know everybody would not agree to this, but you use a phrase like, wasn't mental health, but something like that, our health as a body. What did you call it?
Self-care.
Self-care. Aside from the professional development, is all very important. And I do think that it is a value that we sort of take time occasionally, once, twice a year, to do something completely social, even if it's dinner or whatever. I don't think, because here's the reality, whether we always like each other, sometimes we don't like each other during meetings, we're stuck with each other, at least for the time we're, so I think it's critical that we try to set aside some time to do something that doesn't necessarily relate to board business, whether it's a Christmas party, a dinner, going to go-kart, golf, putt-putt golf, something. Because in this work, when you're stuck with folks, it's always better, I think, if you can appreciate there's another side to them other than what you do when you're doing board stuff, which always is contentious and difficult and challenging. So I think we should prioritize some kind of activity once, twice a year. I know Commissioner Vice President Elliott one time was promoting, dinners. We did that once or twice, but with that sort of fallen off by the wayside, I think we should try to do that. You got a new superintendent, she's got a new team. Even if it's not just to build a sense of teamwork amongst ourselves, just to get to know these new people.
And I don't want to put your new superintendent on the spot, but she is amazing at that. I'm just going to.
She is.
All right, so I'm going to put that down. I'm going to put PD.
Yeah, before COVID.
What did you say, Ricardo? Commissioner Adams, sorry.
Yeah, so in reference to, in reply to Van, before COVID, my technique for that was I was giving everybody hugs, but I won't be doing that. So
I even got a hug, and I really appreciated it. And Superintendent Meyer, smile, you were going to speak.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I just in case you wanted to refute what I said.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a lot down. We have a lot to work on, and I want to move us along in respect for all of your time this evening. So if we could move to the rankings, and you'll see all of your names at the top in order after President White and Vice President Elliott. And I think if we put these down, we have a little more than we have space for. So if we do like we did, if we bucketed them, if we put finances first, and again, these include a lot of pieces around what policy and finances and monitoring as you do, you know, you are in charge of the fiscal environment. Academic improvement is going to include more things than that says. Community engagement is a big priority for you. Equity, which could fit into some of those other pieces. Equity is financial equity, it's academic equity, professional development, and team building. And then absenteeism, we didn't put separately. Obviously, I didn't count on a number of extra boxes, but I will keep that on my list. Oh, she's going to add a row. Wow, you are awesome. Thank you. And absenteeism, and again, some of those fit into, obviously absenteeism is related to academic improvement. You are talking about absenteeism in
Student engagement.
In student engagement, yes. But you're also talking about making sure that Rochester City School District is a school of choice. So you also want to talk about making sure that students stay, that they want to come to your school district and that they want to stay in your school district. So I'm going to give you just a minute or so. I know not all of you have these, but I want you to think about these because this is a lot and a lot to deal with. And I kind of want you to rank them. And I don't want to put you on the spot right away. I want you to think about these for just a minute. So I will be quiet and let you to figure out what you would rank these in. Right now we have 6, so 1 through 6. Do I have 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I think if you turn
7.
that, we understand that priority preference is what all of these buckets stand for. We did leave off board development.
It's right there. Professional development and team building.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that.
No, not a problem.
I still think we're missing something though. What? Oh, okay. All right, there are only 6. Thank you. Oh, it's enrollment and student engagement, not absenteeism. Okay, got it.
Okay. If you, when you finish, if you just raise your hand, then I'll know that you're complete. We'll just keep an eye on each other that way. Okay. Oh, cool. Oh, all right. Excellent. So we're going to go in order, starting with President White. And Kalia, if you could just, as they do it, if that's possible, you should, yeah.
So Sherry, so what am I supposed to?
Tell me what, if you were to prioritize these, so if we have to narrow these down, if we can't keep all, now again, it's up to you. You all want 6 of them to work on this year, which is quite a hefty load. How would you prioritize those? What order would those be in if you had to narrow it?
I'd start with academic.
Okay, so
And
that's
I'd
number
go
1.
to finance.
Okay.
Number 3 would be enrollment. What is it? Enrollment. Student engagement. Number 4 would be professional development. 5 would be equity. 6 would be community engagement. I think I'm missing one. What's the 7th?
Nope, you got it.
Is it 6?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, Vice President Elliott.
I would concur with you, Sherry, that this seems to be ambitious, which says to me that the policy committee is going to have a lot of work to do. So I just want all of us to keep that in mind when we talk about these things. But having said that, I would rank finances as 1, academic improvement as 2, absenteeism as 3, community engagement as, no, let me back up. I'm sorry, after academic improvement, my next one is equity. So that should be 3.
3. Mm-hmm.
Absenteeism should be 4. Community engagement 5. Professional development 6.
I'm up.
Yes, Commissioner.
And I only have 4. I just do it my way. This is who I am. My number 1 is finance. My number 2 is academic. My number 3 is community engagement. And my number 4 is equity.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner LeBron.
Ricardo, you mad funny. I love you. My number 1 is finances. My second one is equity. My 3rd is student engagement. My 4th is community engagement. My 5th is academic improvement. And my 6th is team building. And I just want to say I'm not interested in having dinner with folks. I just want to focus on the work. And I think if as a team, we could just focus on the work, regardless of whether our personalities mesh or don't mesh, then we'll be okay if we all focus in on the work that needs to be done.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Malloy.
Okay, so number 1, finances. Number 2, equity. Number 3, academic improvement or achievement. Number 4, enrollment. Yep, and the student engagement. Number 5, community engagement. And number 6, the team building, professional development. I mean, I think they're 2 separate items, professional development and team building. So that was a tricky one for me.
Yeah, and we can include it. We can conclude the professional development if that's where it all falls out. We can put professional development in any of those categories, right? So if you want professional development around student engagement or community engagement or academic improvement, those are all opportunities where you just get to learn more and engage more in those particular activities. And team building doesn't necessarily have to be dinner. There are lots of activities that we could do together that aren't your typical team building things, but also help teams work better together. So next is Commissioner Powell.
Okay, well, I had a framework by which I approached this, and that framework basically said every decision we make has to start from so all the financial decisions, all of the academic improvement issues have to start from an equity framework. So I'm making that number 1. And there's no one else responsible for carrying the community's voice but an elected board. So I made community engagement my number 2. That, all of the rest of our work has to be done through those lenses. Finances was my number 3 because we're going to do it. No, finances, not academic improvement, Calia. Because, we're going to be doing that work month in and month out, whether we want to or not. It's a question of whether the financial decisions are done through the framework that we want and are policy directed, or whether they're simply reacting to the administration. I don't want to shortchange academic improvement, but that's getting my number 4. And student engagement is 5, professional development 6. Again, not because I want to shortchange it, and it's going to happen. Some board members are going to need more individual professional development because they're new to the board versus others. But we could all use, and I actually agree with Commissioner LeBron on this, that our team building will happen through the process of working the issues. It's inevitable that we figure out how to work together. That's just inevitable. The question is how long it takes us to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Shepherd.
1 is finance, 2 is academic improvement, 3 for enrollment and student engagement, 4 is for community engagement, 5 for equity, and 6 for professional development.
Okay, so that was an excellent exercise, and I agree with Vice President that this is going to be a large charge. I believe all of you are up to the task because I've worked with you over time, and I know that you take big chunks and you are able to digest them and dedicate yourself to the work. If I am looking at, and feel free to disagree with me, if I are looking at the finance is obviously your number 1, as Commissioner Powell said, it will be your primary focus. It's everybody's primary focus because right now there is no other focus. Without the resources, you just simply can't do all of the things that you need to do on behalf of kids. Academic improvement and equity I have as the next. And then it gets a little professional development. It goes to the bottom of the pile. This is true of boards across the county. You all want to take care of everybody else and you put yourselves last. But again, we should be able to put some of that professional development and some of that team building into some of these other pieces of work. Because as you start looking at policy, as you start looking about how to monitor your strategic plan, as you work with the superintendent, you're going to find areas where you're going to want more information. And so professional development will happen more naturally. In terms of community engagement and student enrollment engagement, perhaps we could look at making a way to combine student and community engagement and maybe break some of those pieces into different opportunities moving forward, that would give you 4. Or are you happy with the 3 that you have? I just need your feedback.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, I'll try to repeat that. It looks like finances, academic improvement, and equity are the top 3. Professional development, we're going to figure out how to embed that in these 3 currently high. But there's a community engagement piece in this where the board is interested in accessing parents more regularly and to get their voice as well. But also the student engagement enrollment piece is, where are kids going to school, and do we need to look at school choice within the district? Do we need to look at school choice with outside the district with regards to charter schools? That's kind of how I'm seeing that goal, and I'm not sure if we want to combine that or leave it for now. And that's what I'm getting feedback on.
Sherry, can I just add, in terms of professional development, under the Finance Committee, we are committing to having professional development in every Finance Committee meeting moving forward. And Akali and I are meeting tomorrow, but to discuss the survey findings, because we did survey the board to prioritize that professional development. So that is one way to embed it that way. And perhaps we are going to have a reinstated ESSA committee, Excellence in Student Achievement Committee of the whole. That could potentially be another committee that also has some professional development around data and academic programming and performances for the board as a whole too.
That's perfect, and that was great to know, because you are absolutely right. That will fit naturally into where you want to go with this. So I would like to get to the next part of this conversation. It is 6:52, and I want to be cognizant of the time. If we were to take your top 3 to the next slide and put down finances, academic improvement, and equity as it relates to board priorities, what would you as a Board of Education see as potential metrics? Now I say potential, right? Because these are, again, we're just looking through what these are. You still have to decide what the wording is on these goals, and I will give you some language around that, what the, how you're going to formally approve those at another meeting. And then after you do that, you're going to need to make sure that you're monitoring those just like you would be monitoring any other district goal, and that you evaluate either mid-year, I would recommend mid-year, and or the end of the year. Definitely the end of the year, especially since you have a board evaluation tool that you have access to. So what I was wondering about, as you all talked, many of you talked about policies that you would look at, professional development that you would work on. You will have some specific metrics given to you by the superintendent that will help you know whether or not you were able to capture that and make that goal at least trend it in the correct direction, even if you don't achieve it. I know that in some cases you want actual numbers, right? And the superintendent will be working on that in terms of giving you that data pieces. But as a board metric, what you want to make sure as well is that you're trending in the right direction, so that you're moving in a positive way. Again, I will go back to the work that you've already done. You've got great pieces in policy, you've got great pieces in your standards of conduct, in your code of conduct, in your bylaws. Those are great pieces of work that put you in a better place as a governance body. So when you look at finances, I'm going to go back to the words that you put down in the place. It's advocating for resources. It was looking at raising revenue. It was, do you look at your policies in a more fiscally responsible way? So do you look at your financial policies? Are there things that, and I will give you this, I will take these on your behalf like I've done before, and I will put words in there for you, and then you can then react to those words. You tell me.
That sounds good.
Sherry, yeah, Sherry, I'd vote for that. I think that, I mean, it actually worked well the last time you did this for us.
Yeah.
And then maybe Commissioner Malloy could set up a follow-up meeting for us to meet. I don't know that you'd have to participate in that, but that makes sense to me.
Once I hand them over to you, they are all yours to do as you see fit. I just try to get you to this particular point, and I am happy to do that. I have done that with some of the other boards, because when it gets to this point, it's easier to take everything we have in notes and then apply it versus you trying to work through. Virtually, this is a lot harder because you can't go happen. So I'm more than happy to do that on your behalf, if that's acceptable, Commissioner Malloy.
It's perfect. Thank you. We will set up a time to do all that.
I have one more slide that I like to share with you before closing out. And I just talked about next steps, so we can skip that one. Several years ago, I was able to, and this was like right in the beginning of my career as your executive director, I was able to attend a presentation called Leadership Under Fire. And it was a riveting presentation. And I wrote about it this month in the News Scope, in my little column that I get in the News Scope. And I don't know how many of you have read that, but you are all leaders under fire right now. And what Dr. McGow, who I'm giving credit for, did is he talked to us about what kind of leadership skills that got these presidents and these military leaders through crises during their time. He was a historian for politics and for military. And I can't give you all the short stories that went behind these as to whether it was President Lincoln or whether or not it was President Bush, or all of the different military leaders and political presidents that had to work through these. But these are some of the tenets that he came away with. And I, as a team, as you were working together, these are some of the things I would share with you, that this is what leadership is. This is how leadership functions. And I just want to share those as inspiration. You have had a tough year. You are walking into a tough year. You are stronger together when you work together. You have a great team. You have a wonderful superintendent. She's developed an incredible cabinet. So I would encourage you to just remember those as you move forward. And unless you have any other questions for me, I will turn this agenda back over.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You know, we so appreciate the wisdom that you've provided us with, and you continue to provide us with. Your thoughtfulness in all of this is much appreciated as we, you know, work towards creating not only these priorities, but then district goals. And so we do have a lot to follow up on and process, and we'll definitely be reaching out and using you as a resource shortly.
My pleasure.
Yeah, but I feel like we've made a lot of progress this evening, and that you've provided us much insight. These are great key starting points that we can work on, and it's exciting work. And I think that we should be proud of the work that we did together here tonight. So thank you so much for all of that. Thank you, Dr. Myers, for assisting with this. There's so much more to do, but I'm feeling really positive in our next steps. So that leads us to the following. What are our next steps? I think that I'll be working closely with Marisol and with Kalia to help plan for some future retreats, as well as with all of the other commissioners, so that we can continue these discussions and then get a plan in place. So thank you so much. Are there any other final questions this evening? Are we good? I don't see any hands. All right, any other next steps that you'd like to share, President White or Vice President Elliott?
No, I was just going to say we do have to go into executive session tonight,
Oh, we
discuss
do?
a few things. Oh yeah, yeah. Not gonna get away with it tonight.
Then I shall graciously leave you to that. And again, thank you for having me, and I am willing to help out anywhere you need me. And you all take care, okay?
Thanks,
you.
All
Sherry.
right, Sherry, thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
All right, so I
So-
guess I hand things over to President White.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. I need a motion to go into executive session to
So
speak
moved.
to our general counsel and to discuss contractual issues, an employee issue, and also to discuss a personnel matter. I think that should cover it. Vice President Elliott, you made that motion. I heard you say
Second.
so moved. And Commissioner Malloy seconded it. All those in favor of going into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Is Tom here, or who's the person behind the curtain? Is that you, Tom?
I'm here.
Oh, are we in executive session?
You are now. I was waiting for you to just say goodnight, everyone, to the public, and I was just gonna bring you right.
Right. Good night, everyone.
Tom, welcome back too.
Yeah. Welcome back, Tom.
I was just sharing Mahima with you for a couple weeks before she left the district.
She's leaving?
This Friday is her last day. It's very
What?
sweet. She took another opportunity as a coder.
Wow.
Good for her, though, man.
It's sad that her and I have become great friends, so we'll keep in touch, and she'll be
Wow.